think what's next for us is the ongoing experimentation, to find ways to, it's not only, I realize, just bring the game closer, because I think that assumes that people are already fans of the game and understand what they're seeing. I think the next challenge for us is engaging new fans with the game in a way that makes it more understandable. I think, for example, in our sport, and I think this is true even of people who followed basketball, for their whole, lives as fans. And I hear this, and it bothers me sometimes that back home, that people will talk about coaches only to the extent that they're motivators and don't understand the complexity, for example, of the offenses, of the plays that they're running, of these very intricate defenses. And I think technology, we need to find a way, and I was at a meeting earlier today with BT and talking about this with their head of production. It's like, how do, we know that in markets like the UK, that in order to grow our fan base, we need to create more engagement. And I think part of the way to create more engagement is to help people better understand what they're seeing. I know that's, for me, that, I grew up, I'll call it soccer just so people don't understand what I'm talking about. I grew up playing soccer in school, but I didn't really understand the complexity of it. And now I've been to several matches here, and it's, as you might imagine, if I'm sitting with someone who's a huge Chelsea fan and they're explaining to me, like, you need to understand what's really happening on the pitch there, it creates an amazing engagement with me. All right, now I know what I'm looking at.
Yep.
And I think it's the same in basketball. The fact is, now not everyone has the luxury of sitting next to someone who's a former footballer or someone who has real expertise. And I think it's so we need to find a way using technology so that people have that in their ear, so that and they can have multiple channels. I mean, in a way, I think that's what sort of is so special about, in essence, unlimited bandwidth and unlimited channels with the internet. That, for right now, when you watch an NBA game, for the most part, you only have one audio channel. You only have and by definition, the commentators have to talk to the average fan, right, to sort of create this universal experience. But it may be that fans of different levels of interest, there may be, and what's so fascinating, those commentators don't necessarily have to even be sitting there in the stadium or the arena. So that for one set, maybe I'm a fan and I want to hear a group of former players having a conversation about the game as they're watching it. How do they react? How does a former player see what's happening? What does that mean to them? On the other hand, I may be new to the game. I'm, watching rugby, a sport I don't follow as closely. And, so I want a more elementary broadcast, and I want to hear more, I want the very basic rules explained to me as I'm watching it. And I think that creates a whole new opportunity for us, so that you have the video and, you can pick, and maybe it's unlimited, and maybe it's user-generated in the way now that if you're sitting at home and you want to create, in essence, an audio channel, that in the same way now that it's amazing what's happened in the NBA. I mean, it used to be years ago that only credentialed journalists were the ones providing their view of the experience to fans, and in a formal way, through well-known publications. Now there's a whole universe of bloggers.
Yeah.
And many of them, almost by definition, because they're not official, they're not credentialed, we have no control over them. Maybe that's not good for us, but they're sitting in their basements somewhere, watching games in high definition, and they gather huge followings. In fact, I mean, probably the best read sports writer in the United States is a guy named Bill Simmons, who now writes for ESPN. But he began, his moniker was of the sports guy, and his approach was, I'm not going to be a credentialed journalist. I'm going to be the average fan. And I'm going to explain what I'm seeing from that fan's perspective, not sort of an official perspective or not from a seasoned journalist perspective. And, and then ultimately ESPN adopted him. But I think, it to us, then the next issue is, how do we, as the NBA, accepting that we're not going to be able to control the content, harness it in a way so that if I'm a fan at home, whether I go to NBA.com or whatever else, there's a presentation that that shows me the whole universe and that allows, you know, where somebody is going in and selecting for me what those most interesting audio feeds are to create the most entertaining experience.